Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tate.
I'm Raymond Peterson.
I'm Bob Anthony.
I'm Alan Singer.
We have a guest with us, Reshma B, producer, filmmaker. Reshma, do a self-intro. Give us a little bit about what you've done.
So, like you said, my name is Reshma B. I'm a music journalist and a filmmaker. I am the producer for this film, Studio 17, The Lost Reggae Tapes. We had our New York premiere on February 1st, kicking off Black History Month and Reggae Month at the Bronx Music Hall. It was a great sold-out event, and we are getting ready for our second screening on the 21st of February at the Cinema Arts Center in Huntington, Long Island.
Fantastic. Studio 17, The Lost Reggae Tapes. I saw that screening at the Bronx Music Hall, and your film premiered their first screening at the Bronx Music Hall. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, it was a first and a first for both of us, but it was a great turnout. We had some legends in the building like Cool Herc, of course, a Bronx native, but it was great to come to New York finally and have people of New York watch this film. And I'm really excited about our up and coming screenings. And thank you for coming. I'm glad you came and enjoyed. And it's really exciting to tell your audience about what to expect.
Let's roll a trailer so they can get a little taste of Studio 17. Bob, roll what you got.
It's coming up now. This is it. Look. This is 17 North Parade. There's no Randy sign. They haven't got the sign on anymore.
Downtown at 17 North Parade was the hub for everybody who loved music. It was the artists on the sidewalk, musicians on the sidewalk.
And people point and say, that is the place you want to be. That is the dreamland. Like if you get up there, you get somewhere in life.
Music was what we were used to express what's going on in the society.
There was a lot of gunshots and people holding up people, and so much riot went on during downtown. We had to close the shop 3-4 times a day, draw down the shutters.
I feel so distraught and so angry that Randy's closing down.
That's where he fell and bled and dead.
His untimely death put a real toll on me as a father. I had to find something to honor him, and by doing that, the tapes, the perfect thing, tapes.
Interesting trailer, and I know more than an interesting film. That's a phenomenal piece of work. So Reshma, give us a little background about how you came to this story, how the tapes got lost and rediscovered, almost lost again, and those are the icons of reggae that we got a short glimpse of on that little trailer. So background real quick.
So as you saw, the film is really, of course, a musical journey, and it is about the birth of reggae, how local musicians create and producers created music that ended up being called reggae, which was a local sound for local people in Jamaica, because reggae wasn't being played on the radios then. That was Jamaica radio played, country music. So it was a new thing at the time. How I discovered, so effectively it's a musical journey of the birth of reggae, but it's also one man's quest to salvage his own legacy. And that man you see who's taking us through it all is Clive Chin of the Chin family. He was Vincent Chin, who owned Studio 17's eldest son. And sorry, my dog is frantic in the background, so I'm
Can't hear the dog.
Didn't hear it.
So I happen to be, as a music journalist, this is what we do. We interview artists, producers, and I specialize in reggae and dancehall. I happen to be at an event where, after the tragic death of Clive's son, Joel Chin, I was at an event at which I had written about at a publication in England called Clash Music. I happened to be in New York at an event where I saw Clive, so I wanted to go over to him, speak to him, give him my condolences. And Clive is a legendary producer that also has been credited for the first ever dub album called Java Java Java. He has many accolades, and you'll see in the film how many great songs and artists he's worked with and produced. So he told me, oh, come to the office tomorrow and we can do an interview. I said, of course I will. I was excited about that. So when I turned up to speak to him the next day, we were just doing a general interview really about him. And then he started playing some music for me. And I didn't recognize it. And I said, oh, I don't recognize these songs. And he was like, this is Dennis Brown. And I was like, Dennis Brown has got a pretty famous catalog, but I don't recognize any of these songs. He was like, you wouldn't, because they're not out yet. And I didn't think anything of it. And then he played me something else and he was like, this is Lord Creator and it's not out yet. And I was like, what do you mean none of these things are out? And he said, oh yeah, well, I just got back from Studio 17 about 1,000 tapes, and we're digitizing them. We're in the digitizing process. We just salvaged them. And these tapes were, like, as you know, from the 60s. So they've survived looting, Hurricane Gilbert. And, Paul Allen at the time, who was a big reggae head, had approached Clive because he himself wanted to put on an exhibition about all the legendary studios in Jamaica in his own museum, in Seattle. So Clive had made some type of arrangement with him that I will let you have things from our studio to recreate that at the Music Experience Project in Seattle if you help bring back all these tapes.
Reshma, what year was this meeting with Clive?
I think it would now, we're coming up to 10 years. So if you count that back, I can't remember exactly.
2015, around 20.
At that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so during our meeting, he told me, we're going to announce this to the public. And if you want, you can come to the press conference that we do. So I was excited so I rearranged my ticket, made sure I was staying for this press conference. And then I heard the story about these are unheard, unreleased tapes. Some of them are mixed sound, but a lot of them, the most interesting ones are the session tapes, because you hear the musicians talking and bantering before they make these amazing songs that we know as like huge songs. I mean, you're talking like things like Bob Marley and the Wailers, and Studio 17 produced some of these legends, and Lee Scratch Perry produced some of Bob Marley and the Wailers' most important albums at Studio 17, and that Peter Tosh was the in-house musician at the time. So there's a lot of legends that came through that world. So when I heard all of this stuff at the press conference, I approached Clive and said, I need to be at one of these digitizing sessions because I want to know, I'm really interested. And I got myself in. They didn't basically want any journalists in there. I got myself into the studio, and this is you talk about the whole night, because reeling off tapes is in real time. If you've got an hour tape, you got to sit there for an hour while they reel this off, and you have no idea what's going to come. Is it going to be Bob? Is it going to be Toots Hibbert? Is it going to be the Scatterlights? Is it going to be Peter Tosh, Lord Creator? It's pretty incredible. And for me, as a music journalist who does cover a lot of reggae and dancehall, I've not been around at the time of those greats. That was before my time. So I felt like I was in a time capsule while these musicians were talking, bantering, then playing their music. It really felt like you were in the room with everybody. They would talk about whether they're feeling hungry. All right, take one, take two. I'm not feeling great today. Oh, the drummer needs to be a little, come in earlier. You're just in a conversation. So my mind was obviously blown. And at the time, I was a stringer and did a lot of work for BBC Radio 1 and 1 Extra, which is really primarily for the younger youth radio audience. And I knew that this was a very substantial story. So when I went back, I decided to contact the head arts program of the Radio 4 network, which, it's called Front Row. And they were excited about the story. So we produced a whole segment about this story. And at the time, it was coming up to Jamaica's 50th year of independence. So it's a perfect package. And, the story was very successful. And then I was asked through Widestream Films and BBC to make, to produce this as a film. And it would be my first feature. So, of course, I was excited. And I said, yeah.
So
That's the long and short of it. But, since then, we've celebrated. The film actually took 7 years in the making from that time.
that's what I was going to ask you. Where were you when, I know from the film, I know the tapes were sitting in Clive's basement, but when he brought them up and took them to be digitized, where were you guys working? What facility? Were you in New York or were you somewhere else?
Everything was in New York. So the digitizing process is all happening. And that's when I came into the picture, while they were already deciding to digitize them. But it was here in New York and a facility in Brooklyn, I believe. But I don't know if they moved around. But that's when I kind of joined the journey. And, we're talking about something like 1,200 tapes. Most of them were like session tapes, including some master tapes. And, it was, it's really amazing to see the journey, because when you listen to them from the start, just that era, you really can see how everything, the music changed from ska.
Yeah.
Then it kind of starts mento ska, and that's kind of where the island starts having its own identity of its local music, and that really goes into roots reggae as and it reflects the time and the mood of the country as well. As you're talking from independence and then all the way into after, when there was a political warfare in Jamaica. So you hear the transition and the mood of what the country's also going through these session tapes.
Yeah. One of the things that intrigued me about the journey of the music is the journey of the Chin family. And a little bit background about 17 North Paradise that became Studio 17. Was it Clive's dad who actually started it?
Yes, so actually Clive's dad, whose name is Vincent Shin, used to just be they used to have a record shop, but then they started with the record shop, and then eventually upstairs started to became a studio, because they started voicing local talent and having producers come in like Lee Scratch Perry or Bunny Lee, and they would hire the studio and make albums like for artists like Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, Alton Ellis, Gregory Isaacs, the list goes. Dennis Brown, there's an unheard Dennis Brown song in the film that you can only hear in the film. But Vincent Chin he got the nickname Randy's because he was infatuated with the Randy's record store in Nashville, I believe, which I didn't know about until we screened our film in Nashville. And that record store used to sponsor a spot on their local national radio station. And this show or this radio station could be picked up all the way in Jamaica, you see. So Vincent got really inspired by this one segment. And so he started calling himself Randy as like just a nickname for himself. And he named his own record store in Kingston, Jamaica in North Parade, Randy's. So that's how Randy's record store came about. And his wife, Miss Pat, him and his wife really was like a mom and pop shop. And they would run this record store in North Parade in downtown Kingston. And then eventually, you know, Lord Creator was his first hit artist. In Jamaica was having independence. And so Lord Creator, they produced a song with this artist called Lord Creator called Independent Jamaica. And that became such a big hit that from that money they started developing a studio, and that's how the studio happened. And it was on 17 North Parade, which is why it's called Studio 17. And the Chins actually ended up becoming, you know, when they left, because due to political stresses, they ended up relocating here, and they have their own journey as another record and distribution label called VP Records, which stands for Vincent and Pat. But this is the Studio 17 was its own thing before that happened here in New York.
Reshma, would you be willing to share some of your own story and how you came to be connected to reggae?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you could tell by my accent, I'm from London, or I was born in West London, and actually the Notting Hill Carnival is on my doorstep. So you have to be part of it, whether you like it or not. Good thing we loved it. And, you know, reggae played in my household every day. My mom played UB40 all the time. That was her favorite band. And it's ironic because in the film, there's a great story about how UB40 pay their royalties and actually help someone like Lord Creator get, you know, off the streets and build a home for himself. So the story is much about the economics of reggae, as well as it is about the birth of reggae and who the names and faces of these musicians are. So I feel really proud that the film touched on a lot of different parts of reggae. It's a genre of music that I was raised on. And, you know, Top of the Pops is a huge music program that aired on the BBC for years. And even though it was over, it would do reruns and reruns so we could watch them all the time. And reggae, people like Maxi Priest, and you heard like Carl Malcolm, all these songs, they were all that were being produced in Jamaica were hit songs on the BBC Top of the Pops. So these were icons that you were seeing over and over again. So that's part of my connection to this film. Of course, I ended up, you know, meeting with Clive, and Clive entrusted me with this story. So, you know, as a music journalist, I feel great that I was able to stumble on a story like this. And, you know, you don't really have things like, you know, a lot of people have described Motown Records as being something of a very similar kind of story where, you know, it produced local talent, produced a local scene, the local scene, which now becomes a global scene. You know, Reggae Month is called Reggae Month because Dennis Brown was born on the 1st of February, and Bob Marley was born on the 6th of February, and then Reggae Month became the honored month, not just in this country or Jamaica, but all over the world. So you see the impact that this genre has had all over the world. And for me, reggae has always been pop music, very popular, you know, everywhere you go. As a music journalist, I travel a lot, and I always, you know, everybody knows reggae music. You might not know the names to the faces to the songs, but you pretty much know a reggae song. And I don't know many people don't like the genre, to be honest with you.
Now, I'm a tech reporter, and
I was going to ask about the digitizing process, but obviously that was done before you joined the project. But once you said Paul Allen, and just to remind everybody, that's one of the co-founders of Microsoft. And so now I
Oh,
know,
that Polo.
yes, that Paul Allen. So now that confirms in my mind that the digitizing process must have captured everything on the tape. And for those too young to have listened to reel uncompressed audio, I mean, that's, if you recorded that, that's amazing. So kudos on that. And I can't wait to hear the rest of what you saved.
Thank you. I mean, I was actually there during the time of the digitizing. So they hadn't digitized all of them. And something that you'd be interested in knowing, which I didn't know, well, these old tapes are so fragile, they had to be rebaked. And the reason why needed somebody like Paul Allen to help bring them over, because you have to store them. So, they were so fragile. There's special storage just to bring them over, but they were so fragile, they were rebaked. And then, when you would reel them off, you never knew, they might snap, and then the engineer has to like put them back together and then reel them. It's a very painstaking process for the person who is doing everything in real time. But I appreciate you picking up on that, because it wasn't a small thing for all of these tapes to have finally been digitized and salvaged.
And
Reshma,
Eric and I were having that conversation, and I'm sorry, Eric, didn't mean to talk over you, but we were saying that when you digitize, you have one chance. You do it right the first time, because, like you said, it flakes as you go. So you have one chance. But go ahead, Eric. Didn't mean to.
same thing. I was going to follow up on what you were saying earlier about the process. Reshma, you managed to actually be there for the digitizing. You were there during much of the process. The film actually shows some of those tapes snapping and being respliced, if I remember correctly.
Yes, correct.
So you were privy to the actual putting back together.
Yep.
As they did the digitizing to recapture those lost tapes. Your camera work, who shot most of your stuff?
So Mark James, the director, was the main camera person on the whole film, actually. So shout out to him. Has done a lot of shot a lot of visual arts films, like Damien Hirst films, one of the first Damien Hirst films. So that was the connection we also had, where it was funny when Dave Stewart, he was also someone it was funny how a lot of things organically just kind of cross paths again. And through Mark, we knew Dave, and Dave happened to be there with the singer who was very enthusiastic about our work. And that's how we were able to find Holly, who came along and helped finish one of the films. But everything was so organic, although it did take a long time. And one of the reasons it also took a long time is we didn't want to take while we were talking to all of these legends who really spoke on their belief about us putting out a very genuine piece of work, you started to realize that a lot of them had hard times, and a lot of them didn't get paid for their work as much as they felt they should have, which comes out, in the film. We touch on it, and we really realized that it was important for us to tell the truth about this story and not get it muffled. And the way we could do that was to really just tell the story without having to sell a lot of the ownership where it may get distorted or erased. And so that was a very big deal for me personally, because a lot of these artists were telling their truth and they wanted it to be heard. And we didn't take funding from record labels or somewhere where we felt the story might be compromised.
Interesting. The backdrop setting, which the trailer touches on, when that political violence, you didn't quite say violence, whatever phrase you use, it actually turned into be a lot of violence and gunshots and whatever. That basically comes back full circle because the Chins leave Jamaica, leave the studio. One of the hurricanes come through, basically demolishes their property. The tapes actually hang in because they're on the second floor and then have to be salvaged. But the third generation, Clive's son, wants to go back to Jamaica to reclaim that family legacy and restart their music business in Jamaica. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Clive is Miss Pat's stepson, and when they relocated to New York, they all started VP Records. Clive's son, called Joel, who R.I.P. to Joel, was working as the A&R for VP Records at the time. So they were still all working for the family business and wanted to relocate to Jamaica to just be closer to the artists. And there was a tragic incident where he was murdered while he was out there. And of course, that becomes part of why the film is about one man's quest to save his own legacy. Because that's how Clive got, you know, Joel would tell Clive all the time, why do you have all these tapes downstairs? Why don't you do something with them? These are legacy artists. And Clive explains in the film, you know, he'd make up all these excuses. He just didn't do anything. So after the tragic death, Clive was really, you know, of course, it took a lot of toll on him as a father to lose a child. And I think he delved into the tapes as a way to like really honor his own son and find a way to get some, you know, continue his legacy. You know,
I remember when ska came out, I never heard it at that time, just back in the late 60s, I believe. But I was wondering what the evolution was to reggae.
Well, unfortunately, we only have 10 seconds left.
I know.
So, yes. Come
and watch a film. It's the political climate of Jamaica. So the producers are doing it. The sound reflects the political movement. So you'll see from independence to when independence wasn't working and there's more Jamaica, you know, political turmoil. The sound is changing, and that's where some of it starts to come towards roots and reggae, and that's when Bob appeared with the message of Rastafari, and you know, and you guys come and see the film, and it would be my honor to put you on our list. It's on February 21st, as you know, at the Cinema Arts Center, and I really appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for being with us.
We're out of time. This has been Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
Oh, I'm Raymond Peterson.
I'm Alan Singer.
And I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on YouTube at Media Watch EVT, and pretty soon on Blue Sky at Media Watch EVT.
And we'll catch you the next time, folks. Thanks again.